Aaron Rodgers, who's going to have to compete or go somewhere, we don't know where he is, I still keep him on the mountain because I do think if he were willing to take literally any job, he would be a week 1 starter. I'm not sure if he is, so maybe he won't be, but right now, it's where he is. Kyler, weird spot for Kyler. It just feels like, I don't know if he's ever going to be at his best for a full 17-game season. We haven't seen it yet. Michael Penix, you got to see a little more. Bryce. Russell Wilson, we'll see if he's a week 1 starter, keep him on there. Derek Carr, it was a contract probably going to keep him in New Orleans. And then, of course, Cam Ward. Cam Ward makes the mountain because I think he is going to be the number 1 pick of the draft. He is going to be a week 1 starter somewhere, whether it's the team that currently has the number 1 pick in Tennessee or whether they trade it to someone. Cam Ward makes the mountain. 6th row, 3 rookies we expect to be even better in year 2. Caleb, who, had a disappointing rookie year. Drake May, who was worse across the board and everything than Caleb, but somehow everybody loved his rookie year.
Mythical.
And Bo Nix, and made the Pro Bowl. And Bo Nix, who statistically had an awesome rookie season. I think his head coach might be putting him in some tough spots in some divisional matchups, talking about excited to play certain teams, but we'll see. And then 3 former top 5 picks who need big seasons. Tua, because of the way the last 2 years have ended. Trevor, because we have to find out if his body has fully betrayed him. And Sam Darnold, because given how the final 2 weeks of the year went, people were a little worried, same old Sam. What was it? Same old
Darnold
Sam. That's right. Row 5, Justin Herbert. Listen, man, you got to put some pelts on the wall through 5 years to be a top 10 quarterback. You just have to. You got to accomplish something that isn't just your throwing motion to be a top 10 quarterback, so he's right there. Jordan Love, we'll see. Some really high highs, but if you were to just be like, hey, pick out a random Jordan Love game from his football reference page, the odds are it's pretty mediocre. Like the median Jordan Love game has been pretty mediocre with some high highs. And then Dak, Geno, and Purdy, 3 guys who I feel like you love if you're paying them and $30 million a year. And you don't feel great if you're paying them $60. Geno's locked into the 30. Dak is now 60, despite Bruce's beliefs that Purdy just has the gleam of an eye of a guy who will take 40. It sounds like the reporting is it's going to be closer to that 60. I don't think that's good for San Francisco. 4th row, Stafford, Baker, Goff, and CJ. These guys have now earned the right to be called perennial playoff quarterbacks. Each of them have made the postseasons each of the last 2 years. There's only only Josh, Lamar, and Patrick, I think, are the other guys to have done. Oh, Jayden as well, as each of the last 2 years. Maybe I'm leaving someone out, Jordan Love. But all of them also have played well either both the last 2 regular seasons or both the last 2 postseasons. I think those guys are, at this moment, and shout out to Baker for achieving this, consensus top 10 guys. At least they should be, given how they've played the last 2 seasons. 3rd row, huge year next year for Joe Burrow. So he now has lost his most notable accomplishment. The only guy in the league to beat Mahomes in a playoff game. And also, it's been 2 years since he's played in a playoff game. Now, 2 years ago, he was banged up throughout the year. This year, he played great. The team wasn't good enough. Still, huge year next year for Joe Burrow. For Jaylen, next year's the year he tries to kind of further, I would imagine, Bruce's Russell Wilson career arc for him, which is consistently keeps getting the wins, adds probably more stats to the resume. Again, if they win at this level, he doesn't need to do that. But assuming we're not gonna have back-to-back champions after not having one for 20 years, probably a stats year is important. And Jayden, I think, has earned it with the trepidation of he's the guys on this row, the most likely that I could see falling a couple rows, just because there is the sophomore slump thing, and we will see, but his body of work up to this point is tremendous. And I think the top 2 rows are pretty self-explanatory. Row 2 is the last 2 league MVPs who, despite being league MVPs, haven't made either of the last 2 Super Bowls, and it is because they have lost to the guy above them who, despite not winning league MVP in both the last 2 conference championship games, has beaten and most critically thoroughly outplayed both of them.
Okay. Thoroughly outplayed him. Okay. This is fun. First off, guys, this is why I talked about how important it was that the Chiefs don't win the three-peat, because it was going to honestly ruin sports talk, because we were just going to get such intense biased content, and now we don't. And it saved sports talk for me, I think for a lot of people. Not because I don't want to see great. It's not because I'm hating on Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs. It's because I just want balanced, honest, authentic conversations. I crave it. It's what I love. It's what I try to do. And now we get to have more interesting conversations. But we're still not quite there just yet. We're still not quite there, which is great. First off, this is clearly Hurts's Himalaya. Okay? That's what this is. This is Hurts's Himalaya. Put some respect on Jalen Hurts. I don't think Jalen Hurts is at the very top, but it should still be Hurts's Himalaya. But okay, let's get into this. Let's start actually at the top right off the bat, what Nick said. And then I'm going to kind of pick and go through kind of all these quarterbacks, honestly. I'm not going to go through like the order of every single one, but there's a few things that really stick out to me. And I'm really excited because this is actually going to be an interesting conversation. So I really hope you stick around, because we're going to go in and out of these weeds, man, because there's so much to talk about here. And at first I was kind of dreading these conversations. Now that the season was coming to a close, I started feeling that way going into the Super Bowl. But like now it's just like, no, like actually I'm actually truly excited for this conversation. First off, let's start off with like the last completely wrong thing that he said, that Patrick Mahomes outplayed Josh Allen in that NFC Championship game, in the AFC Championship game. That's just not true. And it's just so funny because I brought this up before during that conference championship game when Josh Allen had that final play. Nick Wright said, "I believe that Patrick Mahomes would have found a better way." And I was like, that's insane. I made a whole video off of just that like single sentence that Nick Wright said. And then now here we have a Super Bowl where Patrick Mahomes was given ample opportunity to show what would he have done in any of these in any of these chances, and he did not do anything better than Josh Allen did. Not a single thing. In fact, you could argue that Josh Allen did better against that pressure than Patrick Mahomes did. So don't tell me that Patrick Mahomes outplayed Josh Allen in that game. It's just not true. It's just not true. And if what Nick was saying was right about Patrick Mahomes, then why did he not play better in that Super Bowl? There was ample opportunity where Patrick Mahomes was off script, scrambling, trying to do stuff, and he could not get the job done. He was scrambling, he throws a pick six, okay? He's scrambling, trying to take off, nope, tackle, 1 yard. Jalen Hurts was scrambling, throwing 22-yard perfect passes to Saquon Barkley, to Devontae, to AJ. He was scrambling, boop, up the middle, rips off a 20-yard run. So, stop with the automatic just praising that Patrick Mahomes can do no harm, because it's just not true. And stop with the automatic so-and-so outplayed him. Because, again, if we're going to have that logic, then Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes by a vast margin. A vast margin. And if we're going to go by that logic, well, then Hurts should be even higher then. You got to be consistent with what we're saying out loud here. Now, I actually think Jayden, you can make the argument that Jayden should be above Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to get too lost in that right now, honestly, because I do think Jayden Daniels is special. And I think what's so interesting is, and this is why I'm excited for this conversation, because we're going to kind of keep going in and out, talk about different quarterbacks at different times. And Jalen Hurts now is just a perfect indicator of this, because Jalen Hurts was completely unfazed in every single playoff game he had this year. I'm not saying that every single playoff game was perfect and amazing, because you could even say, against the Rams, he took sacks, but he was never fazed. He was never overwhelmed by the moment. You can't say that about a single playoff quarterback. You can't say that about a single playoff quarterback. At least once throughout a game was a playoff quarterback this season overwhelmed and kind of like, oh God, what's going on? Every single quarterback except Jalen Hurts. Just a fact, man. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. Again, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts never had a down moment. He literally threw an interception. but he was never phased. He was never truly uncomfortable. He got sacked like 5 times, I think, against the Rams. He even got sacked out of field goal range, but he was never phased. It never bled into another aspect of the game. There was never any issues. Like, it was complete composure, 100% unfazed. You can't say that about any other quarterback. You just can't. And I think Jayden Daniels played awesome in all of his playoff games and even played really well even against the Philadelphia Eagles. But there was, and I can make the argument that he was unfazed, but there were still moments when he was kind of like, there was still like a drive or two where you're kind of like, I don't know what you're doing in this moment, you know, like kind of like, you know, and it was a tough matchup. It was tough. You're going up against the Super Bowl winners, you know? So again, I don't hold Jayden Daniels' feet to the fire in that moment, but if we're really going to pull back or really zoom in, however you want to look at it, like Jalen Hurts' you know, composure was unmatched, untouched relative to every other quarterback. Josh Allen even, you know, Josh Allen did not look comfortable in that first drive against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, again, I blame coaching a lot for that, but also if I don't have my notes anymore for that game or they're somewhere around, I did write, you know, Josh Allen looking reckless, you know, and again, that's a balance between coaching and Josh Allen himself. Lamar Jackson, I defended Lamar Jackson's issues in the playoffs, but still, there was still clearly uncomfortableness at multiple times throughout that game. And I think those things have to mean something. I really do. Again, I'm not going to get lost in terms of where Hurts should put in, or you should put Hurts above Lamar or Hurts above Allen, because in a separate video, I really want to unpack like the problem with ranking Jalen Hurts, like why people struggle where to put Jalen Hurts, because I do think it's fair to say that Jalen Hurts has had better teams than the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. You know, he just has been on better teams, which again, Philadelphia Eagles fans shouldn't get mad about that. They should be like, yeah, that's right. We build better teams than those teams. Like, we actually could build a team that demolished the Kansas City Chiefs, and you guys can't even win a single playoff game against them. So like, you know, say it with your chest out loud, but at the same time, Jalen Hurts shouldn't be completely penalized because he also steps up in those games. Like, that's the difference. He steps up and plays big, and when they take away some of the greatness of that roster, they can overcome it. You don't necessarily seeing a lot of these other quarterbacks consistently be able to do that, you know, and that's why Jalen Hurts deserves more credit. But like I said, we'll unpack that more. I'm sorry, I'm not putting Baker Mayfield above Justin Herbert. Now, again, this is the interesting thing about Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has been on inferior teams with bad coaching, just overall in terms of compared to these other top quarterbacks out there. But at the same time, and again, I defended Justin Herbert in that playoff game as well. But again, when you see someone like Jalen Hurts keep his composure throughout the entire playoff run, and you see Justin Herbert essentially not, I'm like, yeah, that's a ding. Now, again, I don't think he had a good team. His team was nowhere close to that of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, etc. So I'm not expecting him to win, but I guess, you know, in hindsight, I could expect him to have better composure. But at the same time, I'm only expecting so much from him. Year one, hardball. That team is clearly being rebuilt. They're clearly in the process. So it's just like to keep holding his feet to the fire, to act like Justin Herbert is on the level of Geno Smith and Dak Prescott and below Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, you know, Stroud, Stafford, you know, any of these other guys above him, essentially. Like, I'm just not going to do that. You know, I'm just not. And it's kind of absurd. The reality is, again, this is also not necessarily a prediction of what you think is going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I guess it's kind of a combination a little bit, but like putting Bo Nix on the level of Drake May and Caleb, I don't think is fair. Bo Nix played better than both those quarterbacks. He absolutely did. You know, he was not a liability for his team in any game. You know, he was not the liability. There were absolutely games where Caleb Williams was the liability. And again, to be clear, I think Caleb Williams will absolutely positively bounce back. And I think Caleb Williams absolutely had bad coaching, bad coordinator. Apparently, Shane Waldron wouldn't even look at film with him. So, like, you know, I defended Caleb throughout all the year. But fair is fair. Bo Nix played better. And so you have to just accept that. Does that mean that Bo Nix is going to forever be above Caleb Williams? Absolutely, positively not. But you have to still be fair. You have to respect what Bo Nix was able to do. Bo Nix, you know, Nick said that they, you know, that Sean Payton put Bo Nix in difficult situations, and it's like he put Bo Nix in situations to succeed. And Bo Nix outplayed Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead. Like, that was big time, and he deserves credit for that. He deserves the respect for that. Sam Darnold does not deserve to fall off a cliff. You're not going to put Sam Darnold on a lower level when he played unbelievable throughout the whole season. Again, he was pressured nonstop, okay, against the Rams and against the Lions. And you use that to say, I told you Sam Darnold's not that good. Well, then what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl? Like, then what happened? Was he just pressured? Did Patrick Mahomes not fall off a cliff? Did Patrick Mahomes not arguably play worse with dealing with that pressure than we saw like a Sam Darnold deal with? Like, you can make that argument. So then was Patrick Mahomes just benefiting from great teams and great play calling? Like, I don't know here. So again, you can't have it both ways in that regard. You just can't. Just like how I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes, that game was proof that he's awful and that he's now below Jalen Hurts and Lamar and Jayden and all of this. Like, I'm not doing that either. But like, come on, man. If you're going to say that Sam Darnold completely fell off, well, then you have to say that about Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. The lights were brightest. This is where you say that Patrick Mahomes plays his best, that he plays his best. He technically fall off a mountain. Again, it's like not even opinion. Patrick Mahomes literally had one of, if not the worst games of his career. And if you want to say, oh, well, he had pressure all day, well, then say that for Sam Darnold. Say that for Sam Darnold. Say that for Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was being pressured all day in that playoff game as well. And he threw interceptions. He turned the ball over, just like Patrick Mahomes. Interesting. So, I do think that the fire should be lit under Tua and Trevor Lawrence. Not so much. I know who Dak Prescott is. Dak Prescott is exactly who he's shown us to be. He's a pretty good quarterback. He's not terrible. He definitely has moments in games where he does play terrible or bad, like lots of quarterbacks, but I think it's slightly at a higher rate. You can't 100% have faith that he's going to ball out when the moment is brightest. He struggles against great teams. He's often not the difference maker. When you give a great team around him, he can play really good, and he can have moments where he also dazzles. He can make beautiful throws, beautiful plays, and he can absolutely flirt with plays and drives or even games where he's great/elite, but he is absolutely not a great quarterback and not elite. He's good. He's a really good quarterback, and I agree. If you paid him $30 million, that would be amazing. And if you can stack a roster, absolutely. I think you can be awesome. But it would be very coach dependent. It would be so coach dependent. And if the defense takes away, like I always think of like if you put them on the 49ers, or heck, now we can just use the Eagles as a reference because they actually brought it home and won the Super Bowl rather than the stacked 49ers teams with Jimmy Garoppolo and Purdy. Now we can use the Eagles as the gold standard for that. If you put him on the Eagles, he would be so much more reliant on Kellen Moore's game plan as well as Saquon Barkley balling out. Jalen Hurts was able to overcome Saquon Barkley being taken away, at least from a traditional, we can hand the ball off and he's going to go off for 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. Saquon Barkley was obviously an impact from a game plan, all that. Still had like 90 some yards from scrimmage, but he still obviously they still put a tremendous amount on Jalen Hurts' shoulders, right? They said, Jalen Hurts, you have to beat us. And Jalen Hurts completely did that, right? Jalen Hurts did not make those mistakes. They put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands when it was 4th and 3 in the first quarter opening drive, and it wasn't like a little 7-yard pass to Dallas Goedert. It was a shot down the field. Yeah, it got called back, man, but that is the moment. That is the moment. That is greatness. And that's what's a shame when flags fly like that, because people won't even, don't realize how massive of a moment that actually is. And how much of a massive, that's our guy. We trust Jalen Hurts. That is a huge moment. Dak Prescott doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. He just doesn't. And he's never shown to be able to do that. Honestly, I believe Purdy can do that, and Purdy can do that during the regular season. He hasn't shown to do that in the Super Bowl. He hasn't, Purdy did not elevate in the Super Bowl. He did not play awful. He was not the reason why they lost, but he did not elevate. Jalen Hurts is now elevated in multiple Super Bowls. Dak Prescott is not elevated in playoffs games. He's had some good stats. Some of them were completely just garbage time stats, or he played against an inferior team where now you're just feasting. They played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and feasted. So stats will always be misleading in that regard. Tua and Trevor Lawrence, it's yeah, man, at this point, it's time to show what can you do. You got to step up. I think having someone, and I'm going to keep referencing Hurts because he obviously won the Super Bowl, but it's kind of look what Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do. You know, one season the Miami Dolphins had like the best offense in the NFL, and then that best offense did not show up in the playoffs. You know, they fundamentally did not show up. So it's just like, why? What's going on? Trevor Lawrence, I'll give him a slight pass with coaching and with injuries and all that. So we'll kind of hold him off to the side. But the other quarterback who I also really, really want to mention too is Penix. Penix got lost in the shuffle because he came in at the end of the season. It was the Atlanta Falcons. I'm sure a lot of people were not like really like, oh, what are the Atlanta Falcons going to do? And Penix did not have the same amount of hype that Bo Nix had, Caleb, or Jayden had, especially when you see Jayden balling out. People aren't necessarily going to be like, what's Penix going to do? Like, you know, more general fans are just not going to jump onto that. But I watched all of Penix's games, and I was wildly impressive. And when you look and see what Penix did, he actually technically both just eye test and statistically played better in his first few games than Jayden, Bo Nix, and Caleb did. Like it's true. Like it's night and day. He played better. He made harder throws. He was more composed. He had a higher PFF rating. You know, higher everything. Like he absolutely just played better. When you compare his first 3 games to their first 3 games. And it was in moments that mattered. The Atlanta Falcons threw him in and said, please be a great quarterback. If you win, we can make the playoffs. Whereas those other 3 quarterbacks got entered in the league, it was 0-0, 0-0. You know, like these weren't tough games. Like literally, Penix had to go up against Jayden Daniels, who was balling at this point, you know, who was playing great, you know. Caleb Williams got to go against the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis, a quarterback who's not even on this mountain, you know. So like those things matter. Those things matter. So I think Penix was really, really, really impressive, truly. And I think he just deserves a lot more respect than what he got, considering the situation that he was thrown into. Bryce Young, I'm really excited to see if he can kind of continue to with the momentum that he got. You know, Derek Carr, I think, was obviously poised to have a really great season. Then injuries caught up to not only himself, but then that team as a whole. I mean, heck, the Saints looked like they were about to light the league on fire. And then obviously it just completely, you know, just got burned out. You know, Rodgers, and I'm not going to have much to say about Rodgers. You know, I don't know where he's even going. I think Rodgers can still be a pretty good quarterback. He's obviously older, but like, I don't even know where he's going to be the quarterback of. You know, Ward, I'm not gonna comment on Ward. Like, you know, didn't we learn our lesson from Caleb Williams, putting him top 5, you know? So, but I mean, I think that's pretty much the gist of it. I think when you see some of these other quarterbacks, like the Goffs, like the Strouds, you know, some of these more quarterbacks that are not 100% blue-blooded, when you see what Jalen Hurts, I think honestly, use Jalen Hurts as the reference point. When you see Jalen Hurts elevate in the playoffs, and when things are not going his way or the Eagles' way, or when they take away something that has been a constant for your team and your offense, what do you do? And we just saw these other quarterbacks not rise to that occasion. And you did see Hurts. Now, again, can Hurts do that game after game after game? No. And honestly, I don't expect really any of these quarterbacks to be able to do it. But when a quarterback does it in the biggest moments in the playoffs, they absolutely, positively deserve the praise. They just do. And when you now look at that and think, well, why didn't Goff do that? Why didn't Stafford do that? Why didn't Stroud do that? Why didn't, you know, Lamar do that? Allen, whoever. Like, I think it's a fair question. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you automatically use it as a reference to say these quarterbacks are not good or this other quarterback is better, because again, you can take an isolated game of Patrick Mahomes of just this last Super Bowl and be like, see, he didn't rise to the occasion. And although he didn't, and it's worth talking about and discussing and being honest about, it's not automatic evidence that Mahomes is overrated, that Mahomes is trash, that he's not good, but it is evidence as Mahomes is not invincible, that Mahomes is maybe not as amazing and as an extraordinary as you're trying to point him out to be, that he's a great quarterback, an all-time great quarterback, a special quarterback, but he also needs to be put in a great situation as well. And when compared to some of these other quarterbacks, he's been in a significantly better situation. And now when you have Jalen Hurts on board in a great situation with great coaching and a great team, going up against another quarterback who's in a great situation with a great team and great coaching, Jalen Hurts balled and Patrick Mahomes falled. And you can kind of use that as a reference point when evaluating all of these other quarterbacks. All of these other quarterbacks. And if you want to say, well, Patrick Mahomes wasn't really on that great of a team, that's why he failed. Well, again, use that then for Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Stafford. Just keep going down the list of quarterbacks then. Got to be consistent. Got to be consistent. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Nick's Hurts' Himalaya? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.